Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to the First Amendment Room at the National Press Club, a very fitting place for this important conversation. I'm Heather McGhee. I'm the president of Demos, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here, really commemorating the 40th anniversary of a Supreme Court case that has shaped not only our democracy, but our economy as well. We've got an extraordinary panel of legal experts here, and I just want to open up with a few framing remarks to situate how it is that Demos thinks about the issues raised in the Buckley case. First, a little bit of housekeeping. This event is being recorded so that many more people than those of us who get to be here in this room today will be able to hear this conversation and engage in these important ideas. I know that when all of you are on your phones during our important remarks, it's going to be exclusively because you're tweeting, and that is fine. The hashtag for today is Buckley at 40, but not with the ampersand, or else Twitter will be confused. So it's Buckley AT 40. I also want to just do a few thank yous and recognitions of some luminaries in the room. First of all, I'd like to deeply, sincerely thank Adam Liaz, who is a member of our team at Demos and who is really leading our work on the jurisprudential challenge faced by this country, given the court's current understanding of the Constitution in the realm of money and politics. He's here in Washington, D.C. This event has been his baby. The reports that you all have here today, many of them are authored by him, including the Buckley at 40 explainer, which you should be able to use as a cheat sheet during our conversation, and as well Breaking the Vicious Cycle, which really sets out the case and the rationale for a long-term project that we are engaged in right now with partners, including the Brennan Center for Justice and the Campaign Legal Center, to really reconstruct a vision of the Constitution under the Supreme Court's interpretation that supports democracy at its fullest. So thank you so much, Adam, for creating this event for us. And I'd also just like to thank Tia Kane with our team, who has been behind the scenes making this happen. It does not happen by itself. A number of other members of the Demos staff and the team at the National Press Club. I'd also like to recognize someone very important in the room from the FEC, Eileen Weintraub. It's very, very good to have you here. Oh, sorry, Ellen Weintraub. It's very, very good to have you here, of course. Thank you so much for your public service. And thank you so much for being here for this conversation. It certainly elevates it. And then finally, two members of the Demos Board of Trustees that have made it here today. Miles Rappaport, the 13-year former president of Demos, now the president of Common Cause, and Janet Shank of the Pantareya Foundation. Demos is a nonpartisan public policy organization working for an America where we all have an equal say in our democracy and an equal chance in our economy. And we see these two elements as inextricably intertwined. And this conversation today about what has happened since 1976, the year in which the Supreme Court brought us this case, but also the year, frankly and fundamentally, in which our economic fortunes in this country started to sharply diverge. And how is it possible that these two moments in time and what they have set forth are related? Citizens United is the most well-known Supreme Court case of the 21st century, without a doubt. It's also a case that, frankly, unites citizens from the Tea Party on the right to Occupy Wall Street on the left. The American people know that something is deeply, deeply wrong, not only with that case and the sort of popular understanding that it stands for the fact that corporations are people, but also with the system that it is emblematic of. The system where, as Adam's paper so vividly pushed into the national debate, 158 wealthy families have given half of the early money in the presidential primary. A democracy in which most Americans of all ideological stripes say with confidence that the people who are elected to serve them don't care about their opinions because they care about the people that they are on the phone with, as much as 1 out of every 3 minutes of every day, which is the people who can write them checks. Now, Citizens United has been a galvanizing force in our politics. It's sprouted an impressive amount of grassroots activity, including resolutions in 16 states and nearly 700 cities to overturn it. If you haven't seen video from a town hall in a small town where people are talking about Citizens United and the danger to our democracy, you haven't gotten around enough, I will assure you. But Citizens United is, of course, not the most important money in politics case. This case that we are here to talk about today really stands alone. It set the basic structure of campaign finance law for more than a generation. It first labeled unlimited political spending as a form of free speech. It introduced the basic distinction between contributions and spending, what's known as the Buckley divide, and it gave us the basic, what we believe at Demos to be flawed logic that the court extended in Citizens United. But Buckley also did something else that I think has created a chill on the democracy community at large and has put the jurisprudence very far out of step with how most people understand the problem of democracy to be at this moment, which is that it misidentified the problem of money in politics. The case said that fighting corruption or its appearance was the only reasonable justification for limiting money in politics. It declared that we, the people, can't limit contributions or spending for the purpose of leveling the political playing field of political voice between wealthy donors and ordinary citizens. This basic concept that we all are competing in a marketplace in our economy, but that in our democracy, there should not be a hierarchy that is related to our economic net worth, is undermined at every moment that we in the community of political actors engage in campaigns under this flawed premise. I have to recognize a very, very stark trend that has happened since 1976 and that may in fact not usually be part of the conversation about the interpretation of the First Amendment and the practice of everyday campaigning, but it is real and it is the defining feature of our time, and that is the record economic, wealth, and income inequality in this country. Since 1976, the year in which this case was decided, the 90% of the income distribution has had roughly about 10% in cumulative income growth over those decades. The highest paid and richest 1% has had roughly 300% in cumulative income growth over those years. Now, why does that matter to our democracy? Because under the framework of our current campaign finance system, people with, as my colleague Adam likes to say, people with big wallets get to have big voices. And that matters to the fundamental shaping of our public policy because the rich aren't actually like everybody else. This is something that lots of us sort of know when we hang out in wealthy neighborhoods and in wealthy spaces, but it's actually something that political science research is now telling us is empirically true. That particularly on the issues about how to order the economy, the issues where in our complex economic system, the decisions that are made by regulators, the decisions that are made by state legislators, the decisions that are made by people in Congress and the White House have demonstrable impacts on the whole shape of opportunity. There is a marked difference in public opinion between those who are wealthy enough to be part of the donor class and the rest of America. And the regression analyses show that when there is that distinct difference in public policy opinion between the donor class and the rest of America, Congress sides with the donor class. If you haven't read Affluence and Influence, if you haven't read Larry Bartels' really phenomenal set of research on this, if you haven't read The Unheavenly Chorus, don't worry, we summarized it all. In a report called Stack Deck, followed up by a follow-on report that is also called Stack Deck, but that looks at the impact on racial equity of a nearly all-white donor class being the gatekeepers for an elected official body that in this country is still 90% white in a country that is almost 40% people of color. So as we think about what the direction for the court's jurisprudence should be in the generation to come, we cannot be blind to the fact that in this moment when Citizens United and Buckley are the law of the land, the court is very out of touch, very, very out of touch with a country that feels quite isolated from the decisions that shape their economic lives, from a country where the average family, in fact, half of American families, could not meet a $400 bill that came onto their doorstep without going into debt or selling something. Is our democracy, are our elected officials really ready to answer the most pressing economic issue of our time? Stagnant wages, job insecurity, a shredded social safety net, and economic and wealth inequality of a kind we have not seen in this country in generations, when these are the incentives, when this is the interpretation of the Constitution that is supposed to guarantee us a form of representative democracy. At Demos, we answer that question and say no. We're going to need a new jurisprudence, and we're going to need a democracy where everyone has an equal say if we're to create an economy where everyone has an equal chance.